Welcome to Cody and the Cinema. Today, I'm discussing one of the greatest Westerns ever made, and certainly one of the greatest modern Westerns, if not the greatest, Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. It's won many awards, and for good reason. And I want to walk you through some of the deeper meaning that I've found in it, my experience with the film, and observations I've made and that others have made. Roger Ebert, my favorite film critic, discusses how this is a look into a dying world, a past world, a world that is moving on. We see this reflected in many different modern Westerns, like Red Dead Redemption 2, that's been very popular. I actually took stickers and covered my Western movie case with them from that game. Heavily influenced that game. And he says in his essay that you can find on his website, and I'll put a link below to his review, the film reflects a passing era, even in its visual style. The opening shot is of a house, a tree, and a man at a graveside. The sun is setting on this man in the era he represents. And it is in that quiet and that stillness that a metaphorical gunshot goes off, even though the inciting event is a rough cowboy cutting a woman with a knife. It sort of breaks the silence for all the characters. And much in the way that we begin the film with this act of violence, we end with an even greater act of violence. And that the shotgun in the end of the movie, it's so telling for what violence has caused for all of these characters. Everyone's caught in the shrapnel blast of the gun and the effects of violence throughout the picture. And it's no great coincidence to me that that's the weapon Clint Eastwood uses in the end. He even tells people in the end to clear out of the way when he goes to shoot the barkeep. And that's a recurring and obvious, not subtle theme in this story, that we're all called in a path of vengeance and violence all the way to the end. I wanted to note the women's role in this, who effectively go beyond the law, try to find power in other means beyond convention, beyond what is established in society. And really what they do is, by collecting all their efforts together, they form some kind of a union and they buck the law. We see this in films like Mate One, right? That's what they're doing in this anarchistic government that exists, depending on how you define that definition. I want to talk a little bit about Gene Hackman and his Crooked House, because I've seen this movie many times. In fact, my first copy I had to throw away because it has so many scratches on it from when I used to watch it on my small TV. But Gene Hackman's Crooked House, that is the obvious metaphor for the society that we have here. Nothing is stable, nothing is built correctly, and again, in anarchy, but not thought of in a positive light. We think about a character like English Bob, who looks at America and sees nothing but wild, untamed nonsense. He has no respect for it. He simply comes to exploit it and exploit the money he can get out of it. He shoots the animals in the air because to him they mean nothing. Nothing will mean anything to him in this entire country because there isn't something as well established and as regal and as meaningful to him as a monarchy. Or is there? Because Gene Hackman himself is a monarch in this town, or at least tries to be, and that is why the women have to go around him. So in some ways, he is telling English Bob, I'm the king. I don't care if you like that or not. He's more powerful than the president that English Bob also dislikes. I've been reading the Russian classic, the Brothers Karamazov. And I can't help but draw comparisons because we have three brothers who have a father who's awful, And the father in that book is Fyodor, if you haven't read it or unfamiliar with it. And to me, when I think about all the problems that these three sons in this novel have that are a direct result in some ways of their father, their own shortcomings too, but of their father, I think about the father of violence and just malicious vengeance that is ever present in this movie. I mean, three people moving toward a common goal, going across vast lands. It's almost a Christmas story, isn't it? It's almost biblical. In a rewatch of this film, there's so many chilling, terrifying scenes. But the one in this last rewatch that has been sticking to my bones is the scene where Will Money, he's up above the rocks with his other two companions, and they find one of the men that needs killing. And Ned can't do it, the kid can't see well enough, whatever. And so it's up to Will to take a gun he's not very good with and make that shot. And after he makes the shot, the victim is dying and is thirsty. And so there's a separation between his friends who don't want to get shot in the crossfire. As you know, they're scared to go give their friend a drink of water, and Will Money instructs them to give him a drink of water, idiot. He says that. It's a kind of compassion that he knows his former wife would have wanted him to have that doesn't meet the practical needs of the money he needs to gather from this kill. And at the same time, you know he enjoys it at least a little bit in that moment, and he kind of hates it. Another part that always stirs me is when he talks about seeing the insides of that person's head that he killed before he gets clocked by the sheriff. All those moments, I think the whole film relies on Clint Eastwood being able to sell that character for a long period of time. This is a movie that structurally, I cannot believe, went through studio executives, and probably only did because of Clint Eastwood, because there is so much talking. It very much reminds me of The Gunfighter, the great Gregory Peck classic that I've talked about on the channel before. But again, we start with loud, crashing violence and end with even greater crashing violence, and a whole lot of the film doesn't even have violence. And you know another film that's famous that doesn't? Rio Bravo. A lot of the great Westerns don't need the gunshots all the time. I wanted to talk a little bit about my take on the ending. For a long time, I've been a fan of W.B. Yeats, the great modernist poet. And there's a theory in English that I'm going to roughly explain as the center cannot hold. Modernist poetry came at a time when everything in the world was changing, to simplify it. And one of his famous poems, The Second Coming, which admittedly is there's a much larger context to that poem than what Unforgiven is doing. But it so reminds me of that end scene where Will Money comes in and fulfills his own demonically laid self-prophecy. And here are the lines from The Second Coming from W.B. Yeats that I thought works so well with the movie. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passion and intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. Unforgiven features terrific performances from the entire cast. It makes good use of a side quest with English Bob, like I said, that I really can't believe made it through the studios, that I've heard criticisms for in the past, but it builds those themes so well. My final thought on Unforgiven. I've said this in my Are You New to Westerns video, which you should check out if you are new to Westerns. It's so approachable because it's so universal. All of us have regret and a past we are ashamed of in some way or another. It could be something much more simple than what Will Money did. But I think it strikes us deep down in those moments where they're lonely by the campfire waiting to do something awful, where we look into ourselves and we see something we don't like that we maybe can't even change, even if we wanted to, even if a good spouse wanted us to. There's something in us that's too dark to tame, and that scares us way more than just the gunfire in this movie. Those are my thoughts on Unforgiven. If you did appreciate the content here today, if you want to do me a favor and click that like button, I also have lots of other content related to Westerns all over my channel. I love the genre, and subscriptions help. I love whenever people subscribe. I love the back and forth, the suggestions you all give me for films and so forth. It builds my life as both a Western lover and a film watcher. With that having been said, I hope you can see this movie again and enjoy it with perhaps some of these things in mind. We will see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.